All right, we are going to show you the 5 exercises to develop the best arms possible. If I only had 5 exercises to choose in order to get, we're kind of cheating here, arms and shoulders to be the best possible, these are the exercises I would do, and I'll explain to you. So your first exercise, we have the classic machine preacher. Now, the reason I find that this is the best exercise overall for the biceps is because of a few things. 1, perfect stability. 2, it's going to have tension throughout the entire movement. You're not just going to have tension in the bottom like you would with a dumbbell. You're not just going to have tension in the top like you would with a cable. But with this exercise, you're going to have tension all the way through. And you can personally dictate where you want to spend the majority of your time. If you want to have a bit more of that squeeze up here, you can. If you want to have a bit more length, you can. And this allows you to continue to get some work at length like this. And you might say, oh, well, the bicep's not fully elongated because the arm's in front of the body. The difference between here versus here, it's just not that great. Like, sure, there is some difference, and maybe if you wanted to add something else in, you could, like the exercism curl. But overall, if I had to choose just one exercise for the biceps for developing the best as possible, it would be this. And the brachialis also works alongside this fairly well, so it's gonna cover what we need for that body. Let's go. All right, number 2, we're moving on to the triceps. Now, tricep extension is best, but I prefer to perform it in a certain fashion. And that fashion is where I don't actually have to grip anything. You could get cuffs to do this, but I don't have any cuffs. So typically what I do is I use this. I just allow it to hook onto my wrist. Now, my grip doesn't have to come into the factor at all. I take a step back. Now, if you have something that you can put your back against, even better. Great. Almost stays in the same spot. This. Now, you will see people pull way back here, but then you might run into what's called active insufficiency. If you don't know what that is, just look it up. I prefer to keep the elbows on the sides while I do it, and then just fully straighten out. Now, I'm not going to cheat here like I could and show you guys my mechanical drop set because we're talking about just the best exercise. That's technically a few different ones. But overall, I would say the tricep extension. Now, if you want to perform it where it's a bit tougher in the mid position, you can as well. And that's just a matter of being more underneath the cable. If you want to perform it where it's more of an overhead variation, you can. You can bend over and do it like this. I guess technically I did just show you my mechanical drop set. But overall, tricep extension, perfect. Especially the long head of the triceps. Next exercise. Moving on to the side delt. Now this is the best exercise that I've ever found for the side delts. If you want, you can use this machine, how most people do, with 2 arms. The best possible use that I found for it though, the one that I find works the best for me, is actually a single arm variation of it. Now, I don't stand completely to the side, and I always make sure that I put this on my arm, that way I'm not having to worry about grip. And it might be a little bit painful if you're a baby, but just wear a sweater or something, you'll be fine. What I like to do is I like to take a slight angle, and that allows my arm to travel at a 45. Primary advantage of this machine versus other variations of lateral raises. There's tension right at the bottom, there's tension at the top. The machine is on a fixed path. You don't have to worry about stabilizing in any manner. You can move forwards or backwards, just depending on where your best leverages are. Look at that. Look at that. Look at how perfect that exercise is. There is nothing working other than my side delt. And if I want to, and I get fully fatigued doing it up here, then we can do some length and position work at the bottom. It's just, honestly, there's nothing like it. Let's move on to the next one. Now, no shoulder is complete without the rear delt. So, my favorite exercise for the rear delt is always going to be the reverse pec deck. Why is that? Again, similar to the machine that we just did, it's on a fixed path. You can't really mess it up. There's no way that you can mess this up because it's already set up for you. Now, the way I prefer to do it personally, this does not mean this is how you have to do it, is I prefer to stand at a slight angle while I do it, and I pull from here. If you want to sit forward and do it, probably not going to be an issue. It should be just fine. The other thing that I like to do is I like to open up my hands while I do it. Now, the purpose for that is because the rear delt also has the function of external rotation as well as pulling back. So, if I start like this, and I pull from here, I'm getting both of those functions. Now, what a lot of people will do is they will take and they will put it like this. They'll pull to here, and they can't pull past here, so they'll lower the weight, right? They'll lower the weight so that they can pull it back further. The problem is, when you can pull it back all the way like this, what you're doing is you're bringing in your traps and your rhomboid. So I prefer personally to take and do it at a heavy weight so that I'm actually not capable of pulling all the way back like this. I can only pull to about here to keep a little bit more emphasis on the rear delts while you're doing it. But I like to do this, open up, make it pretty heavy, but I fail in your typical range. And you can do this if you want, you don't have to. My preferred thing is to immediately after I fail like that, turn the hands over and then take it to failure again. Not absolutely necessary. If you want to just start like this, you can. These are just personal preferences. This is not literature-backed stuff. I feel like I have to say that every time. Otherwise, somebody's going to say, well, the science doesn't. I'm not saying it does. It's just my preferred way of doing it. But the overall exercise, absolutely fantastic for the rear delts. And that's 4, right? We only got 1 more. Let's finish it off. And the last exercise that we have is for what muscle group? Because we've covered them all, right? The triceps. Now, the reason that we're doing this is because when we do our tricep extension, the primary emphasis, because our tricep has multiple functions, the primary emphasis of this is to work the long head, shoulders staying fixed, but how about when the shoulder is actually moving? If you want to look it up, you can, but long story short, you typically will want a pressing motion as well as an extension when it comes to the tricep because of the biarticular nature of the blah, 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 who cares? What I have found for myself and for a lot of people that I work with is that their elbows just can't handle this. It's pretty tough on them. They start to develop some issues, some aches. That's the way I am. So what I have done instead is I have developed a hybrid variation where it's in between a JM press and a close grip bench. So close grip bench, you'd be back here and you'd be pushing from here. That's going to bring in a lot of chest, a lot of delts. A JM press is almost going to be entirely tris, like this. This variation is going to bring your chest in a little bit. It's going to bring your delts in a little bit, but by far the prime mover is still going to be the triceps. I like to have a partner while I do this to help you get through certain ranges, but you should be able to do this on your own as well. And it's always nice performing the Smith machine because you can take this to failure without having to worry about killing yourself, because the minute it gets too tough, done. I allow my elbows to sink through, allow the elbows to sink, push through, and that is my absolute favorite exercise for the triceps. If you want to do dips or something like that, perfectly fine. But overall, I would say that if I could only choose 5 exercises to develop the absolute best arms possible, I could stick with just these 5 exercises for the rest of my life and have pretty much the same arms I was ever going to have. You could add in some variation, but overall, variety for variety's sake is not necessary. If it's actually going to have a purpose, sure. But otherwise, stick with the exercises that are going to give you the best results and just get better at them over time. TNFO.